this is Detroit AllyCat. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I love everything true crime, spooky, weird. I try to cover a lot of things based in Michigan because I am actually from Michigan. So welcome back. And without further ado, let's get spooky. Okay, let's run through some quick things. I know how you like when I run through some quick things. I am still getting used to the camera. I'm trying something new with the camera, so hopefully it goes good. I apologize if it's not. I don't know if I should even say that to you, but I digress. Here we go. So I am going to talk about something that I have wanted to talk about for a really long time because it's kind of close to my heart. It's actually true crime, which I think it's been a really long time since I've covered true crime. But this one is in Michigan, which I know that a lot of my Michigan people like to hear about this. It's actually very close to Grand Rapids. It's called Hamilton, Michigan. I don't know how many of you guys have heard of Hamilton, Michigan. It's very close to something called Allegan County or an Allegan area. It's about 3 hours away from me, and it's the area that I'm actually going to speak about is extremely rural. So all right, let's begin the story. Did I say my thing? Let's get spooky. So before we dive deep into it, I just want my newcomers to know that, like I always say, let's get spooky, and I know I have a coffin behind my head and skulls and stuff. That is just me. That is who I am. I like spooky stuff. I like everything strange and unusual. I do not take for a second these cases, these people's lives that I'm talking about, and think that they're just a joke. They're not just a joke. I'm just who I am. And I'm trying to bring awareness to these situations because I think that they're very important. So please don't think that I'm trying to profit, which I'm not monetized, so I'm not profiting. Profit or talk about something to make it sound I don't know. I think you're getting the vibe, right? So let's talk about the case. The case is kind of close to my heart because it deals with adoption. It deals with what I think is a possible serial killer. Definitely. What are the words that you can use on YouTube? So I think it deals with a serial rapist. I don't know if you can say that, but I'm not monetized, so I am going to say that. Deals with a serial rapist, and he was definitely a pedophile. So this story starts with this woman. Her name is Kathy last name so bad for me. Turkanayan. Let's just call her Kathy. Kathy, if you're watching this, I do apologize. Turkonian. A little bit of a tricky last name. So Kathy is an amazing woman. She really is. She is a very strong woman. This whole case got brought to light because of her. When she was about 17 years old in 1974, she ended up having a baby. Before she had the baby, she was a very free-spirited woman, kind of like that whole, like a hippie, but not really a hippie, like, you know how you see the festival girls nowadays, just like living life to the fullest and doing their thing. And so she got pregnant. She was 17. She got pregnant and gave birth to a baby. Her name is Alexis, and she kept Alexis for 9 months. And her mother had convinced her that she could not take care of herself or she could not take care of her child. And I would just like to say, and I know that you guys hate when I throw my personal feelings in this, to all the mothers out there that decide that they want to tell their children that are having babies that they can't take care of their baby or their child or whatever, and pressure them to give their child up for adoption, you're wrong. You're so wrong. And I know people are out there are going, oh my gosh, it's such a gift. And yes, it is a gift. It's a beautiful thing for so many different people, especially somebody who makes the consensual decision that they want to give their child up for adoption. But for a young woman, somebody who's on a motorcycle, but for a young woman who doesn't want to have an abortion and does not know what to do, pressuring them to do something to change their life and the life of their child, that really is their decision. Even if you are their mother, you should let them make that decision and you shouldn't pressure them into that. I feel very emotional about that because when I was 18, I gave a child up for adoption, and I'm still conflicted onto if that was the right decision for my child and me. It happened. The child is fine. I'm back in contact with him. But I'm just stating that because there were so many things that led up to my situation and this woman's situation that I just feel like it was just I think adoption's a beautiful thing when both parties are in agreement, but when someone's getting pressured, it goes awry. And that is all I will say. No, I'll probably say more. I will not talk about my situation anymore. I one day will consensually, with like the agreement of the other parties, talk about my situation. I don't think that it's right that I talk about it on here deeper, but that is why I was so attracted to this case. Let us carry on with this case. So Kathy gives birth to this beautiful baby girl. She keeps her for 9 months. Her mother pressures her into giving the baby up, Alexis up for adoption. Alexis is born in New Orleans, Louisiana, which really cool. I hear it's very corrupt there, but still very cool. So, you know, when people decide that they want to give their child up for adoption, they want to make sure that their child has a better life than they would have without them. So wherever they go, it should be up, not down. They want to make sure, most of the time, the child, the person, the mother, the father, the birth father, they are giving this sacrifice because they love this child so much that they want to see them go into a better life. And that is what Kathy wanted. And so Kathy gave up her child for adoption, and she led her life, and she went on for like, I think 20 years. And one day she wanted to find out about Alexis, who is now named Aundria. She wanted to find out how she was doing. She wanted to find out what was going on. That's very common for birth mothers. You never do sever that feeling that you have a child out there. And she wanted to know. And so she goes looking for her child, and she finds out that her child has been missing since, I think it was like 1989. So Aundria, who was once Alexis, had been missing since 1989. And the blow that Kathy must have felt finding out that her daughter that she gave up for adoption, the daughter she never forgot about and wondered about, like how she was doing, was she happy, was she safe, did she have a better life? Well, she'd been missing all this time. I think she was 14 since she was missing. And Kathy decided that she was going to find out what happened to her daughter. And it's the story is just crazy. And I say the story, but this is like real life. And I have so much respect for this woman, Kathy, even though I can't pronounce her last name properly. She's just incredible. I had actually heard about the Aundria Aundria Bowman's story before I watched the movie. They made a movie about it, and it's called Into the Fire, The Lost Daughter, and it's on Netflix. I actually found out that Charlize Theron helped direct it, which is one of my favorite people in the world. And that is such a intense, deep documentary that I think anybody should watch it. Okay, so let's talk about Aundria Bowman. I am not going to call Aundria Bowman Aundria because I feel like that privilege was taken away from her or her adoptive parents. I'm going to call Aundria Alexis because that is what Kathy named her, and I feel like what Kathy went through made her her mother through and through. So going back to Kathy, if I take a break and just stare at the camera, it's because I have 3 really large dogs that do very strange things, and I'm trying to figure out what they're doing. So anyway, Kathy decides that she's going to find out what happened to Aundria, or Alexis, Alexis. And she basically, wherever she's in another state, but she travels all the way up to, Hamilton, Michigan. She finds the birth parents. Their name is Dennis and Brenda Bowman. These people are a piece of work. So she interviews the town, she interviews like all these people, she interviews the birth parents who don't want to have anything to do with her. She goes to the sheriff department. There's no active investigation looking for her daughter. So she's trying to do whatever she can. She ends up hiring a private investigator. A lot of this is covered in the documentary. And I'm just going to tell you right now, I'm not going to hit all the bits and pieces to this story or this situation because I would literally be talking to you for like 3 hours and you'd be ready to kill me. But I do recommend, if you want to know more, like all of it, all the little tiny pieces, that you watch that documentary. It's so good. So Kathy continues to look for her daughter Alexis. She ends up meeting Alexis's friends from school. She just talks to everybody that she knew. And from this, she finds out that a lot of her friends said that it was very uncomfortable going to Alexis's house, that she was treated very badly. They felt like her parents, her father in particular, like physically abused her. They were scared to go spend the night over there. They had said that Alexis had complained about things happening at her house that made her feel really uncomfortable. And at this point, Kathy's thinking something horrible has happened, but she's going to figure out what's up. And so now I'm going to tell you what's up. So let's talk about Dennis and Kathy Bowman. So Dennis and Kathy Bowman, from like the outside looking in, they look like your typical American couple from back in the day, right? And so Dennis Bowman was in the Navy. Brenda was a housewife. She really wanted to have kids, but it turns out that she couldn't have kids. So Dennis goes off to be in the Navy. Somewhere in this mist, they get married. They can't have children. They decide that they're going to adopt. They end up adopting Alexis, who they named Aundria. And I think it was like 14 years later, they ended up finding, Brenda ended up finding out that she was pregnant. So they had another little girl that ended up being their birth daughter. I'm not going to mention the birth daughter's name on here. You can find her on Facebook. You can find her all over the place in Michigan. I don't want you to, because I do feel that this girl, I have conflicted feelings about her, but I don't want her to be bullied. So, and if she's watching this, I have conflicted feelings about it because I'll explain. But I'll explain later, not right now. So anyway, the story goes, the night that Aundria supposedly went missing, or Alexis, Dennis decided to take their new baby out to go get something, and then Alexis stole some money and disappeared. That's the story. Then he called the police. They went looking for Alexis. They couldn't find her. Apparently, they looked every night for her. That's what they say. They seem like they just... Then there were stories about Alexis turning up here, or spottings of Alexis here and there. There was a sighting of Alexis at a strip club, which made things kind of like worse, because everybody thought, oh, well, then she's definitely a runaway. Which you don't know if any of those sightings are real or not, but everybody believed it, so they thought that this girl had just stolen this money from this perfectly normal family, and you know, she just ran away because that's what kids do. Honorable mention right now. I don't think it's an honorable mention, but do you guys remember in 1993 when I think it was called Soul Asylum did a song called Runaway Train? I would sing it, but you guys would be sad. They had a picture of Alexis on there with a bunch of missing people, and it's really sad. It like hit everybody back in the day. I remember watching that video and was like, oh my gosh. Yeah, so Alexis was on there. So going back to the missing thing, Alexis was missing, but here is what we begin to find out. Before Alexis went missing, she accused her adoptive father of molesting her. She went to the school. The school did nothing. She went to the church. The church did nothing. She was telling her friends. There was nothing that anybody could do. Well, her friends obviously couldn't do anything because they were like 14 at the time. But, you know, the school and the church, they did nothing. And then at this point, Brenda gets upset, Dennis's wife, and she says that, you know, Alexis is lying about her because she's a horrible daughter and she doesn't understand why she would say stuff, and she's just definitely like, I'm gonna stand by my man, and doesn't believe anything that her adoptive daughter says. Now, personally, what I think happened is that they had a second child and it was a birth daughter, and it just seemed like ever since that birth daughter was born that they considered the birth daughter to be, you know, their real daughter, and Alexis was their fake daughter. And this is kind of common in child abuse stories. I know that Alexis told her friends that she did not want to leave the house because she was scared of what Dennis would do to her sister. So that's why a lot of her friends didn't think that she ran away. Plus, if she did run away, why didn't she contact any of her friends? So that's the whole story with how Alexis disappeared. And what's even more weird is after Alexis disappeared, I think it was like a couple months later, maybe it wasn't long. It was either a couple months or up to a year later. The Bowman family moved like away from the house, and they moved to Allegan County, which caught everybody off guard, because if you have a missing child and they decide that they want to come back, how are they going to find you? It just seemed like they didn't care, and honestly, I feel like they didn't. So they're living their life at this new place, it was like a mobile home. Actually, I saw the house. It didn't look too bad. It looked pretty nice for being a mobile home. But Kathy was like constantly on them because she thought that this was really strange too. And she had this like private detective have this drone, and he would like fly the drone over their house, and they found this one part that had like cement or something in it, and Kathy just had a weird feeling. And I'm telling you, like, the instinct of a mother is just incredible. Like, seriously, it's one of the most incredible things that you will ever experience. And she actually said it before anything was found out, she was like, my daughter is underneath this slab in their backyard. And she tried to get the police to go look, and they didn't find anything. But let's go backwards, because in 1980, and by the way, I didn't say this, but Alexis, who is Aundria Bowman, was born in June 23rd, 1974. Fun fact, I did say this, but I don't think I told you this part. Fun fact, June 23rd is my birthday. So that's another weird coincidence of this case with me. So she was born June 23rd, 1974. But Dennis, because he was in the Navy, he had to do that. So when you're in active duty, you have to do a certain amount of time in the reserves. And so Dennis was in the reserves, and he had to go to Norfolk, Virginia. And while he was in Norfolk, Virginia in 1980, there was this rape murder that was never solved. It was an officer's wife. Well, the investigators had been investigating this the entire time, and I think they found a fingerprint that led back to Dennis. So in 1989, they find out that Dennis Bowman is actually the person that killed this woman in Norfolk, Virginia. Let me find out her name for you. Her name was Kathleen Doyle, and Kathleen was so beautiful. Like, she was such a beautiful woman, and her family was so, they were really beautiful. And you, like, in this documentary, they interview them, and you can see how the death of this woman, like, literally destroys this family. And so Dennis tells all these stories about, like, he was drunk and he accidentally went into her house, and, you know, he accidentally sexually assaulted her, and then he got scared and he murdered her, because that's, like, completely normal thing to do, is accidentally hop in somebody's house and sexually assault them. So they arrest him, and he's extradited to Virginia. So in Virginia, they're, like, questioning him about his adoptive daughter, Alexis. And at this time, his wife and his daughter, they're, like, going and visiting, or they're doing, like, these, like, video calls. They stuck by him the entire time, and that is why I feel conflicted a little bit about the daughter. I understand that that's her father, I do. But, like, once your father accidentally slips in someone's house and sexually assaults them and murders them, things get complicated. I just don't think you should be standing up for them. So, but that's just me. So they're doing these video calls, and you get to see the video calls because it's, like, public information. And, like, you know, Brenda, Dennis's wife, she will not admit that, like, Aundria could possibly have been murdered by Dennis, even though this situation happened. And then also, while all of this is going on, there is this little girl. She was in Michigan, and she goes to the police and talks to the police about, like, how she had been lured into the woods by this man, and he sexually assaulted her, and then he took off. But the only reason he took off is because he heard, like, somebody coming, and she thinks that, like, you know, because somebody was coming, that he didn't kill her. And she describes to the police what type of truck this person had, because I guess he threw her in the truck or whatever. It's really sad. She was very young. And it's Dennis Bowman's truck. And so Kathy ends up finding this little girl, and they become friends, and they are, like, they're looking for Alexis together, and they're becoming good friends. And, you know, Kathy keeps going to Brenda and, like, begging her to, like, go look in the backyard or do this or do that, and, like, Brenda's just being a complete jerk to her. So Brenda keeps talking to her man Dennis, and the police come up with this idea. They're like, you know, Dennis only has so much time in this planet. And so Brenda's not going to be able to go to Virginia to see him every week. That's just not, like, going to work out. She's elderly at this point. And so they tell Dennis that if they tell him what he did to Aundria, Alexis, that they will move him to Allegan, so that, you know, Brenda can go see her man. And so he finally admits that he murdered his adoptive daughter. He had been sexually assaulting her, and she threatened to tell. And he pushed her down the steps, and he dismembered her. And they're like, we need you to tell us where the body is. And that became a thing. Like, he would not tell them where the body is. So Kathy knows that her daughter's dead, but they won't tell her. He won't tell her where the body is. Brenda's upset because she has to now, like, recognize the fact that, you know, Aundria Alexis has actually been murdered by this man that she loves. It's so messed up because she eventually says to him, she's like, I still love you. But after a certain amount of time, he finally admits, like, hey, this is where Aundria is. And they go in the backyard of Brenda and Dennis's home, and exactly where Kathy thought Aundria was is where Aundria is. It was like a slab of cement in their backyard. He kept her there the entire time. He knew where she was the entire time. And so they excavated her, took her out. He had cut her up, and he had put her in sawdust, and it was just really awful. And that's like, you know, anybody who's gonna give their child up for their adoption, that's their worst nightmare right there. You give your child up for adoption, probably the biggest, best gift you could ever give anybody. And I can't really, yeah, so he did that. And Brenda stood by him because something's not right with them people. And so anyway, eventually after this happened, Aundria Alexis's sister by adoption decided that she was no longer going to stand behind her father. Thank God. And she's not okay with what happened, and she's kind of gone into hiding, and I don't have all the facts of how she feels or what she said. I've only seen what's in the documentary, and it doesn't put her in a very good light at all. But I can't imagine how hard it must be to face that kind of a situation about your family. I mean, my family personally were not good people, so I've had to face that too. But I don't think they've killed anybody. So that's like a whole new level of evil. So the end of the whole documentary, and something to mention, is that they finally, you know, they get Aundria's and Alexis's ashes, and Brenda decides to give Kathy half of the ashes. And it's really sad because why does Brenda get any of Alexis's ashes? Like, were you really her mom? Were you? So that was kind of like a punch in the face for Kathy. This documentary was so good, and it was just like so, it really, if you've ever had that type of situation, for all the women and men out there that ended up having to give a child up for adoption, I would say it's a good movie to watch, but it's also a terrifying movie to watch because it's just what can go wrong in that type of situation. I wanted to talk about it because I felt like not a lot of people know about this documentary, and not a lot of people know about this like case, because it's here in Michigan, and it's literally like I've gone right through that town, and it's just crazy. And another reason I really wanted to talk about it is because Alexis told her school and Alexis told her church and nobody listened to her. And I just, I hear that things are changing, but I also hear that they're quite the same sometimes. So I just want to say, like, if a child says to you, or a child says to your friend, like your child, like if your child has a friend that comes to you or your child and says that something's happening, please take it very seriously and just watch, because sometimes there's no one to take care of these kids. There's no one to be there for these kids, and it's just a really horrible situation. So I just wanted to talk about that, and I wanted to recommend that you watch that documentary. It's so good. Let me just tell you the documentary again. It's called Into the Fire, The Lost Daughter. I hope I didn't screw it up too much. It's been such a long time since I've done true crime. I love you guys for listening. If you've gone this far, think about subscribing. Think about liking this video. Leave a comment. It helps the algorithm. I'm like coming back after almost a 2-year break, sorta. So I'm like a baby YouTuber. But I'm happy that you're here. Anyway, stay safe, stay spooky, and have a beautiful night. Bye!